can we buck the trend of podcasts somewhat, and instead of lauding Joe Biden for this magisterial decision, can we slag him off a bit?
First of all, I think he should have stood down or rather made clear he wasn't going to seek re-election last year at the latest, and allowed a proper Democratic primary to proceed, from which who knows who would have emerged as the nominee. But the fact that he took his time after the debate disaster and then, compounded the problem in a series of car crash interviews, press conferences, and so on, I think speaks to the worst of his character, actually.
Yes, yeah.
Which is when the kind of determination that he's shown throughout his career, which is admirable, turns into mere stubbornness, which then becomes actually sort of Trump-esque narcissism.
I totally agree. And somebody tweeted the other day a video of Biden in 2016 giving a rallying speech. And, if you were in any doubt as to the absolute cliff face of decline that man has gone.
You can go back to 2020.
Yeah. He was a force, an oratorical force.
He was a very, very vigorous alpha male.
And now he can barely remember his name.
Yeah.
It's been so obvious for so long that this guy's not fit to run for a second term.
And I think that when you're talking about the most powerful job in the world,
it matters.
Feelings and politeness are of secondary importance, to be honest.
And blind enthusiasm, which Twitter was. It was a funny split, wasn't it, with Democrats? There were Democrats, I think, realist Democrats who were in absolute despair, and they fell into two camps: ones that were brave enough to say it, and ones that just thought, "My God, I'm just going to have to buckle down and see what unfolds." But then there was this strange clique of people who were just blindly enthusiastic about Biden can do it, Biden can do it, Biden will do it. Biden was never going to do it.
No, absolutely not. And also it became insulting. I mean, it started off as being sketchy. Hang on, that seems weird. And everyone around him was insisting, oh, no. He's pin sharp in private. Yeah. And as Jon Stewart of The Daily Show said, maybe they could have taken a recording of all these pin sharp moments, because there don't seem to be any on tape recently. And then it became, I think, it moved from being sort of a cover up to being full blown global gaslighting, because the world, we could all see what he was actually like, and yet we were being told in press conferences and briefings and off the record and on the record briefings that he was absolutely fine, and his doctors had given him the all clear, and there was no reason to think that he shouldn't stand. He was determined to stand, and this was serious political malpractice in my view. With him leading the way.
Well, not just lead, sort of almost in isolation,
forcing it,
perhaps with his immediate family, supporting him and telling him, "Stand, Joe," when the rest of the world was saying, "Go, Joe."
Yeah, and this is. Let's not forget, he's not up against Mitt Romney.
No, that's right.
Or John McCain. He's up against a maniac,
an orange manic tornado,
who fully intends to enact a series of dangerous authoritarian proposals, which will completely reconfigure what America is,
and has recently been endorsed by none other than Jesus Christ,
and has recently, as a consequence of his brush with death in Pennsylvania, been. There was a lot at the Milwaukee conference about divine intervention.
Totally.
Tucker Carlson said so it must be true.
He believed it. And Donald has said it himself.
Yes, he said, I shouldn't be here, but God, Almighty God has...
God deflected the bullet from an orange misogynistic rapist into the chest of a retired firefighter.
Yes.
That's how God works, isn't it?
That's how God works. And so this is who the Democrats are up against. And... it's a kind of cliche in in all democratic discussions, all democracies, that this is the election of our lifetimes. But in a way, it really is. I mean, if Trump wins a second term, having been already found guilty of 34 felony counts, liable for rape, et cetera, and with the plan that he has, not just Project 2025, the sort of coalition of think tanks that have produced this big bumper set of proposals, but the things he said himself about mass deportations, going after his political rivals, this will be an off ramp from the republic to the beginnings of an authoritarian state.
All right, so what's standing in the way of that happening? We've got a black woman, Californian.
Okay.
Out of those three characteristics, which do you think is the most or least appealing in the eyes of the American voters?
Well, actually, the fact that she's a woman appears to be... I mean, America, and we've discussed this before on the pod, is, America is a fantastically patriarchal society.
Yeah.
And the fact is that, America was ready to give a black man, Barack Obama, 2 terms.
Yeah.
Before electing a woman.
That's right. Yeah.
So, on that, on the basis that it remains a country stained by racism and clearly has a deeply sexist sort of tilt, she's got a lot to overcome.
I think Condoleezza Rice said that America would elect a person of color, but they'd never elect a woman.
Well, I mean, that seems to be the sort of operating principle.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think she's got some chance. I think she's underestimated. I think that she's been reined in by Biden. We know for a fact that she was reined in over Gaza quite recently.
Yeah.
She wanted to use and did use stronger language than him, condemning the Israeli actions, and it was reined in. And I think that he is not. He hasn't given her really a chance to flourish.
Yeah.
Now, is she the ideal candidate? No. And one of the reasons for that is that she's not really being... I mean, she's being given a window in which to develop as a candidate that is fantastically truncated. I mean,
That's
normally a presidential candidacy takes about 2 years. You start with an exploratory committee, you start raising money. Now she won't be short of money. That's one thing that she's got on her side. But you square the press. You start to work out: is it worth it? Can I win?
Yeah.
She's got to do all that in just over 3 months, which is a huge ask. This Trump campaign, which is run by Chris Slasavita and Susie Wiles, is by a country mile the most professional, disciplined, and ruthless of the 3 presidential campaigns Trump has been part of. And so she's really up against it.
Yeah.
And it is true that the Trump campaign was all geared to be against Biden. So, it's this is a new
dynamic, isn't it?
The Republicans are more worried than they're letting on.
Yeah.
But
and to the money point, the good news for her now is that she can spend the $96 million that Biden, and overnight $50 million poured into her election campaign.
Absolutely. So, I mean, if I was her, I would. How would I aim to win? I mean, the first thing. Let's get to the vice presidential pick in a minute. But the first thing is that she was absolutely right on Sunday night to say that for us that she was aiming to earn the nomination. The question really is whether she'll have anyone to run against, because all the people that had been named in the millions of words that were written about, who might replace Biden, have run for cover. So Josh Shapiro, very good governor of Pennsylvania. Gretchen Whitmer, very good governor of Michigan. Pete Buttigieg, transportation secretary.
And those
Gavin Newsom, California.
Yeah,
they've all gone.
Those first 2 candidates would at least bring with them, you'd imagine, a state that is critical to victory.
So they've all said they're not going to run. They're backing her. So she's now in a situation where I think she would like there to be some sort of, if not contest, then some sort of debate
Do you think this is what Obama?
Yes, I do.
Is implying by not directly backing her?
I think that it's been interpreted in some quarters as a snub by Obama that he hasn't endorsed her yet, whereas the Clintons have and Biden has. But I agree with you. I think that he is trying to give, because they're very good friends, give her the space to have some sort of debate. But at the moment, I find it very difficult to imagine who is going to do that.
Yeah.
And certainly we're not going to have what people like the New York Times' Ezra Klein were campaigning for earlier in the year, which is an old-fashioned open convention.
You think that's definitely not going to happen?
I just don't see. I mean, who you need a few candidates.
Yeah.
I mean, the big names have literally all gone.
Yeah.
So I don't understand quite how this open convention would operate.
Unless there's a sort of sacrificial lamb who would at least convey the impression of a process.
Yes, you could have a sort of a sock puppet.
Because what's her legitimacy?
Well, her legitimacy is that she was implicitly on the
ticket, on
the Biden ticket.
Yeah.
And that it carries a lot of water that you've been vice president for 3 years.
Yeah.
I think it was clear from the use of the word earn that she'd like the legitimacy of, something more than just a formal ratification by the 4,000 Democratic delegates when they meet in Chicago on August the 19th. But it's hard to see at the moment, and it is very early days, who the opponent might be.
Yeah.
Because, as I say, all the big contest that was kind of being gingered up is now not happening. So that's where we're at. On the question of how she should try and beat Trump, well, one interesting point about her is, she's a former Attorney General of California, and that was a problem for her in the 2020 primaries because she this, don't forget, was was the high season of Black Lives Matter, and she was labelled a cop because she'd been quite a tough prosecutor. Now, I think what was a problem in 2020 could be an advantage in 2024 because you're up against a felon. So having a articulate, strong-willed prosecutor debating a man who has been already found guilty of 34 crimes, is quite a good start.
Yes. It's a very clear dividing line.
It's a clear dividing line. And she, when you see her actually, I mean, there is a lot of sexism in this actually, because a lot of things that are clipped of her imply that she's daffy, right? And she is Californian. She has that kind of sing-song voice, but she's pin sharp, to use the word that has been misused in the context of Biden when it comes to talking about issues. And I think that for that reason, I think she's underrated. Whether that travels, I don't know. I think on the economy, she's got to stop what Biden was doing, which was sort of demanding applause from a country that's still feeling inflation, and talk with humility, but also big ideas about the future, and also the obvious punch, distinguish herself as a prospective president from Trump, who's going to bring in lots of tax cuts for billionaires. I mean, she doesn't have to be an economic populist just to make that clear distinction. He will push her very hard on immigration because she was meant to be looking after that, and it has been a complete, it's been mayhem. Yeah. And that's going to be very hard for her.
But on the upside, she's got 15 million people who Trump is about to threatening to kick out, plus their families.
She has to say, yep, you're right, it hasn't been sorted. But exactly that. Your mass deportation plan is no plan. Yeah. It's just a recipe for social disaster and un-American indecency. I think if I was her, I would really go hard on the promise of America, the idea of America, and not let Trump, the white supremacist nationalist, own that. I think she should go hard on abortion, actually. I mean, Biden
100%
never went there, really. And we know, partly, I think, because of his Catholic beliefs. He's very, he was very...
He was phobic about the whole topic.
He just didn't want to go there, and he never mentioned it.
Yeah.
But she's actually... And one of the things that's been noticeable is that since Roe v. Wade was overturned, she's been very strong. And if you look at the speeches she's given, she's been impressive. And I think that Americans... who, this used to be a very straightforwardly binary pro-life, pro-choice issue. But I think the kind of chaos of throwing it back to the States has brought about is actually an opportunity for the Democrats.
You've now got a dozen or so states where effectively abortion is banned completely.
Yeah, and women are dying. I mean, that's the other thing is that women are, the pro-life lobby always objects to the use of the phrase reproductive health care. It's not health care. Well, actually, there are women who have died because of the prohibitions, the new prohibitions on
and in J.D. Vance,
exactly,
you have an anti-abortion hardliner,
an extremist.
Let's go as far as saying a nutcase.
Yeah, I mean, no abortions, even in the case of rape
incest
and
rape. That's right.
I think she'll be playing defense on wokeness and DEI, diversity, equality and inclusion, which is a much bigger issue in the States than it is here.
Yeah.
And I think that she needs to shut that down.
Yeah.
Make clear that she's not in favour of biological males competing in sports.
Yeah.
And present herself generally as a meritocrat who believes in the promise of America. She won't be able to, because she is a liberal, she's not going to be able to deny her core beliefs, but she needs to close down the image that Trump will definitely use, which is that she's a complete hippie from California.
So just hold that there. We're going to have a very quick break and we'll come back with some more intelligent thoughts on Biden and Kamala Harris. I did want to talk about the Californian aspect because I think it's a massive problem, and
it's a huge problem.
You spent much more time in the States, and I'm much more aware of the nuances of American politics than I am. But I do remember very clearly spending time in the middle of America and being stunned at how completely wrong I was about how Americans think. Because we're exposed to the coast.
We go to the coasts, right? And I have a personal deep passion for California. I love it. But you would be deluding yourself if you sort of said it hasn't had huge social problems and a lot of what is rather crudely called white flight, especially out of Los Angeles, because it has become, there are a lot of homeless, a lot of migrants who are just moving around without any obvious fate, and also, of course, it is historically and for many decades the home of ultra liberal America. She sounds like a Californian, of course she does, and Trump will maximize that. He'll make her sound eccentric to the point of battiness. And she has to push back against that.
And Trump, I suppose, if Trump represents any state in particular, it's actually not New York, it's Florida.
It's Florida,
And although Florida is on the coast, obviously, but it's uncoast-like in its behaviour, isn't it?
But it has a lot of Cuban exiles and old people. And it is very, very right-wing. Hence the governor, Ron DeSantis, who made a very unsuccessful attempt to be the Republican nominee. So that's how I think she should sort of play it. We're assuming here that she is the nominee. Then there is the question of who she asks to be her vice presidential pick. I personally think Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, is the best candidate. He is very articulate. They're both Gen X, so he's 51, she's 59. So they have that kind of they've knocked on the head immediately the age thing. Trump will be the oldest candidate ever.
Well, and this is very interesting, isn't it?
It is.
He now looks like the doddery one.
He does, and he is. And I think if she could persuade Shapiro, who might deliver Pennsylvania. Now the Democrats to win have to win 3 states, I mean, lots of states, but the 3 states they have to win: Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. And I think Josh Shapiro would probably deliver Pennsylvania for them, and that would be very, very good. Whether he'd do it, is another question.
Yeah, is his? We've talked about racism and sexism. Is anti-Semitism?
Yes, it is a problem.
Yeah.
It's a problem
because he's Jewish, obviously.
Yes, and also, which is an internal party matter, and also a youth vote matter. He's been quite pro-Israel during the Gaza conflict, so that's an issue.
Yeah,
there are no there are no platonic ideals in this. There's no perfect candidate for either slot.
Yeah.
Some other names that have been mentioned. Whitmer, Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan, 2 women. I don't know. I don't have a problem with it, but I suspect Americans might. A more sort of kind of conventional pick, but there's something going for him, is Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona. A former Navy captain and astronaut, and he was the husband of Gabby Giffords.
Gabby Gifford,
who was famously shot horribly in 2011.
Yeah.
So those are the 2 that kind of keep coming up. But
he'd be a great pick, wouldn't he? Because
he would be a good pick. Yeah. I mean, I think that it's going to be a white man.
Yeah.
And there are not a huge. They don't have a huge bench of people that will bring something to the ticket. They have to have people. I mean, this has to be a change platform, and it has to run at warp speed.
Yeah,
and on the basis that it's a Hail Mary pass.
But you, as you said, the big names in terms of standing against Kamala Harris have ducked down in
they
that
will
regard.
Come out and endorsed her.
And the reason for that is probably that they want to another 4 years. They want to go next time. But isn't it, that is dangerous, isn't it?
It is.
Because no one knows what's going to happen.
You never know. I think that it says a lot about what they think the chances of Democrats winning are actually. Because, let's say you're Pete Buttigieg, who did an amazingly effective takedown of J.D. Vance on Bill Maher's show. I mean, just so good.
Yeah.
He's ready. He could be president tomorrow.
Yeah.
And the fact that he's decided not to run shows you that he has very carefully calculated that it's too late.
Yeah.
And I think Gretchen Whitmer and Josh Shapiro and all the other people that have already come in line, Gavin Newsom, have drawn the same conclusion. I think that the speed with which they endorsed her is actually bad news for her.
And so yes, but it's also emerged that she has been touting and vetting people for
very much so,
VP for quite some time in anticipation of this moment, which is sort of encouraging, isn't it? In the sense that the conversations have obviously been going on in the background.
I mean, one of the things that's useful for her actually is that she starts from relatively low expectations.
Right.
There's a very sexist sort of notion of her and racism and, as you say, the California thing and all that. I suspect people will be impressed when she's untethered from the Biden administration in as much as she can be. And of course that is a problem because Trump will say, well, why did you cover up
Joe's
inadequacies? Aren't you complicit in that?
Yeah.
And also, anything else about the record of the Biden administration he cares to. But I do think that it's the speed of kind of the party falling in line behind her is oddly enough a sign of weakness.
Yes, yeah, because it feels like it's been boxed off a little bit. Obama stands out as somebody who hasn't fallen in line. And I've missed the Pelosi.
Pelosi hasn't said.
She hasn't said anything yet.
No, right. no. The three. No. Well, there's Hakeem Jeffries, the minority leader in the House, Chuck Schumer, the Senate Majority Leader, Pelosi, and Obama are the holdouts. Now, that may, as I say, I think that's not hostility to Harris. I think it's trying to give her some space.
Yeah. When's the TV debate? The next?
It's September the 10th.
So that will be. It's August 19, isn't it? The Chicago convention.
Yes.
Let's assume she gets the nod by then. She's confirmed as the Democratic candidate. She goes up against Donald Trump 10, 15 days later, something like this.
Yes.
Head to head. That is going to be the most important hour and a half of television.
And if I was her, I would ask for 2 debates.
Yes. Let's start again.
Because Biden was asked in one of the many terrible interviews between the debate and his standing down whether he would like to debate Trump 3 times rather than twice. And he said, no, I'll stick with 2. And that made him...
stick with none.
I'll stick with none, exactly. She should say, it's absolutely right the American people get to see me twice, at least.
But presumably Trump would have to...
And he'd have to go along with that.
He'd have to go along with that.
So that would be, I think that would be a show of strength.
Any chance of Biden stepping down in the meantime?
No, I don't think so. I mean, the already... I was just watching a clip of Trump and Vance sitting rather awkwardly side by side in a television interview talking about this. And you could see that already Trump is irritated by Vance's articulate and intellectual manner. Right?
I was just listening to Anthony Scaramucci.
You say exactly that,
and he said, Trump hates clever people.
I think he will. I think he will regret.
Scaramucci said he's probably already trying to work out how he can sack him, which of course is impossible.
Trump's face was very interesting, but what they were agreeing on was that there is a contradiction here, which is if she's if Biden has to go as the nominee, why is the world safe in his hands until January the 20th?
Piers Morgan tweeted saying, if he's not fit to run for president, how can he be fit to be president?
And here's where it gets very personal, which is that the 25th Amendment puts it in the hands of the vice president to vote.
Wow.
The vice president and half the cabinet have to effectively evict the president. Yeah. But she will be asked again and again and again, well, if he's stepping down... why aren't you invoking the 25th? Now, the answer to that is just political.
Of course.
The deal, I'm sure, if as much as there was one, was, if you think I'm not sticking around until January the 20th, you've got nothing coming.
Yeah.
But she'll be asked repeatedly.
But listen, it's a long... I know we're saying it's a tiny short time, but actually we've seen how much can happen in a week. In
British terms.
In the last week, we've seen one assassination attempt, and we've seen the incumbent president saying he's not going to stand. So anything can change. Now, Biden could get ill again. He could slip. The deterioration could...
It could well be.
I mean, now that he's kind of admitted it, it's sort of a question of scale of deterioration, isn't it? It's like people will now be saying, oh, God, it's even worse than I thought it was.
Well, I mean, who knows what the state of his health is.
Yeah.
But I find it very revealing that he has not, since he got COVID, he's not really been... I think there's been a couple of shots of him getting onto planes.
By the way, those photographs, I mean, I know he's got COVID, so he can't be surrounded by people, but have you ever seen a president look more isolated than Joe Biden on the steps of those planes? I mean,
there's a wonderful saying of Lyndon Johnson's, which is power is where power goes, and power has left him. I mean, the problem is that, and this is additional to his sort of physiological difficulties, is that he even though he is still notionally commander-in-chief, everyone around the world will now be seeking to ingratiate themselves with Kamala Harris.
Yes, of course, yeah.
And
she by necessity will step out of his shadow immediately.
She has to,
and will start bossing it. One hopes
she has to ruthlessly.
Yes,
there can be no politeness in this.
No.
I mean, the stakes are just too high.
This is not a time for deference.
No, not at all. I mean, his time is gone. I mean, he has had an amazing career in public service since the age of 29. Amazing, but it's over, and this election is massive. And it was interesting that Zelensky was one of the first to congratulate Biden because the fate of Ukraine hangs on this. God, climate change and NATO and trade war and possibly Taiwan. I mean, this is not just it's who sits in the Oval Office is never just a matter for Americans. Okay, but this time because Trump is so completely loco, and because he is such an isolationist, and because he is so in love with fellow strongman leaders, the stake. I mean, literally everyone on the planet has an interest in this election. So, Harris or whoever it is has to just go at this like a juggernaut.
Yeah.
This is not a race in which to take kind of to be cautious. It's a race in which to leave nothing on the pitch.
Right, Matt, we'll end it there. I just wanted to say publicly to credit you for the great headline on the cover of this week's New European, which got some stick from some quarters, but it turned out to be absolutely correct. And the headline being that the bullet hit Trump, but it killed Joe Biden. And
so it seems.
It certainly did.
It did.
Folks, hope you enjoyed the chat. There'll be more from us on Friday morning for our regular podcast. Please get any feedback and any questions into the 2Matts at tnepublishing.com. That's 2Matts, number 2, MATTS at tnepublishing.com. Don't forget your subscription offer. If you value what we do, if you can afford it, it'll be the best £1 or £2 a week. If you want to get the paper delivered to your house, it'll be the best £2 a week you spend all year. So please do join the New European. Go to theneweuropean.co.uk/2Matts. There's a link in the show notes. Imagine how good it would feel if you're a fan of the podcast and you got the newspaper every week. Wouldn't you feel part of a great community?
I think you might be faint with joy.
Absolutely. And for £2, what else can you get for £2?
Nothing.
Nothing. I mean, honestly.
A nasty coffee somewhere.
Not even that these days.
Probably not.
No, nothing.
No, nothing.
But you can get a brilliant newspaper delivered to your door every week, first class post. Just do it.
Just do it, for God's sake.
See you on Friday.
Have a good week.